Ushin tries to move around. Here. And then I'm just going to sprawl. Here. Hand in the knee, hand in the head, and just get up the post. Once he posts, we can shoot a body lock. Right? So when I knock Ushin down, he sits up, and I can use this to get into my body lock. I'm going to try to get as much weight as I can on the knee. I make myself as big as possible, and out the back elbow. Pummel into HQ, and start going into knee slice passing. So it's not just about side control. And it's a very easy pass from here. So keeping his shoulders flat, and I just extend his leg, and I get my hip into that pocket, go with a tight waist or an underhook. And I go into a heavy sprawl in this position here. Alright, so 3, 2, 1. Before we actually go into, like, say, passing from butterfly guard, just want to give you a little drill that I like to do, just basically to kind of get you seeing the body lock. So I think, like most people in the room, you start from kind of like this butterfly guard position. Some of you did it from half guard and everything else, and you shot a body lock, and that's like one of the most common places to get it. But another place you can get basically is off a sweep. So let's say if Ushin stands up, just going to be like a basic tripod sweep. It could be any sweep that you want, so I don't even go into too much detail on the sweep. So when I knock Ushin down to his butt, 9 times out of 10 when someone's back hits the floor in Jiu-Jitsu, they try to take their back off the floor. This is a perfect time to go for a body lock, and you can get this a lot. Whereas like Ushin kind of knows that I want body lock for passing from here, and we have different ways of opening them up and getting reactions and that, but this one's a really nice one to have because they don't really expect it too much. So like what I want you to do for drill is work any type of sweep you want. So I'm just going to use a basic tripod sweep. I put Ushin onto his butt. If his back hits the floor, I just do like a technical stand up or grappler's get up. I lock my hands, and then I can go into different types of body locks from there. Ushin's in this like seated position, but this is a good time to go for a body lock. So there's kind of like 4 main things that we want. So number 1, most people play butterfly guard on one hip for a couple of different reasons. Because if I shoot just a body lock while Ushin's hip is kind of loaded, so on his right side, so I'll exaggerate a little bit. Ushin gets an underhook. If I just shoot, I'm giving him the momentum to just basically end up and sweeping me, right? So what I want to do is I want to get Ushin onto, like, say, both hips here. Now it's safe for me to shoot a body lock. So a common mistake you kind of see, especially if you have good guard retention in Jiu-Jitsu, some people just they just forget about the technical stuff and they're like, oh, I'm just going to bull rush my guard, and then you end up getting swept. Right? So what we want is, we want 4 main things to set up a body lock from this position. So number 1, I need to win the battle for angle. So my hips are lined up with Ushin's hips. Number 2, I need to win the head position battle. So just like MMA, your head's underneath your training partner's head. Number 3, inside hand position. And 4, it goes the distance. Alright, so we're keeping it nice and simple with those 4 steps. And I'll give you different ways of like setting up the body lock and that. But just for now, let's understand what we need, right? So number 1, we need to win the battle for angle. So lining up our hips or lining up our spines. So I can do this really simple. Like, one way is get the hand on the top knee and basically just push him onto the side of his hip. It's very simple. Or I can square it myself. So whichever way you want to do. So I can move Ushin or I can move myself. So one more time. So the way I kind of like to do is just pushing the knee. That's number 1, so we won that angle. Number 2, head position. 3, inside hand position. 4, close the distance. Alright, so let's go 2 for 2 on that. 3, 2, 1. There's a couple of different ways to set it up. So anyone that's good at playing butterfly guard, normally going to keep their elbows nice and tight. Butterfly guard is very similar to like wrestling on the feet. You never want like your elbows too far away from your body. So same as when we're playing butterfly guard. So sometimes it can be hard to punch an underhook. So what we can do is we can kind of pair a couple of different off balances just to kind of open our training partner up a little bit. So 1 is basically just a hand in the knee, hand in the head, and just get to the post. Once he posts, we can shoot a body lock. Right? So we can go like a full body lock where Ushin doesn't have like an underhook or anything like that, or we can get like a half body lock or side body lock when he has an underhook. When we do lock up, say our grip for the body lock, it's important that we bring our weight down to the side of the underhook, because it's very hard for Ushin to sweep me from this position here. Whereas if I let him have the underhook on top, this can allow him to go into his butterfly sweep. So it's a good thing to know because it just gives you confidence just seeing basically space. Like you see Ushin's elbow here, if I give him like a push to the side, 2 choices. 1 is to keep his elbow tucked and I'm just going to roll him over. Here, no one's going to do that, everyone's going to post. When you watch when I push him, if he posts, that gives me separation between his elbow and his hip, and then I can shoot that body lock, thinking about the 4 steps that we're working. So angle, head position, hand position, and then closing the distance. So we'll do that one more time. So hand in the knee, hand in the head, and especially just a push with the collar tight. I go long, so like a long kind of hand, and then short hand, and I bring his heels up towards his butt here. And we want to put weight on the side of the underhook. Alright, so that's going to be our first one. And we'll start getting passing in a little bit. So 3, 2, 1. A little sideways off balance. So we just basically, you can go with the shoulder, the head. The head's probably the best because it's the end of the lever, so the top of the spine. So I give him a push, and then I can shoot my body lock. What we can also do is, if he's kind of maybe more aware to that, is push him on the floor, he sits back up, and now we can shoot our body locks. You can see that what Oshin did naturally was his hands went to the mat, his elbows left his hips, and all he was thinking about was sitting back up. It's similar to what we were doing with the sweep. So if you go back to the sweep, same idea. If I push, or if I sweep Oshin onto his back, especially the way modern Nogi Jiu-Jitsu is kind of going or gone, not everyone wants to play guard. A lot of people want to wrestle up and that from bottom position. So when I knock Oshin down, he sits up, and I can use this to get into my body lock. So it's the same as when we're passing on our knees. So maybe I can pair it with side way off balances, or I can just go with like a push, he sits up, and then I just commit to the body lock. If he has an underhook, I bring him to the side of the underhook, and then we start passing from there. So let's do the first one, and then we'll add in that one, yeah? So 3, 2, 1. So we work on basically like setups on the body lock, kind of closing the distance, and then what we work on is like really important, like when we're playing body lock passing, that we understand how to control in this position, because you're not going to be able to like pass straight away. It's a good passing position, is you're controlling our hips, but what's really good for is, I find, like just kind of cooking people. So like if you've like say really like athletic opponent or someone that's aggressive or just whatever it might be, won't stop, this is a good position to kind of cook them a little bit. So if I can control Oshin's legs, it's like isometric tension the whole time. There's only so much like kind of pushes he can do before he kind of fatigues, alright? That's the way I kind of think about it. Tire him out a little bit in this position, kind of listen to his breathing, start to change a little bit, then I'll start to pass, and then I know that when I go to mount or side control, it might be a bit easier to get the back take, the submission and so on. So most of your positions you want to be kind of thinking of them like that. So if you go to body lock passing, try to cook them a little bit, go to side control, make it as miserable as you can, go to mount, do the same until the finish comes. Does that make sense? So that's a good way of using like your body weight and just kind of trying to break your opponent a little bit, like kind of physically and mentally, right? We managed to shoot our body lock here, so we just want to talk about how we're going to control in it. So I'll start with the legs first. So basically what I want to do is I want to bring Oshin's heels as close as I can up towards his butt, and what this does is just makes it a little bit harder for Oshin to use his butterfly hook. So if he tries to use them, this should be very hard. My shoulders are nice and level, alright, so even if we do have the underhook, if I'm here, you can see my shoulders are fairly level. Never really want one shoulder to dip too much compared to the other shoulder, yeah, so I want them fairly level. So we're here, I bring the heels up to the butt. I can do this like say 2 ways. One is just shoot both knees up at once, or I can walk my right knee and then my left knee here. Alright, so there's a couple of different kind of grips that we can take as well. I really like open body lock passing. Open body lock passing is basically where we're using our elbows and kind of like our triceps to control our opponent's legs here. Alright, in the family stage, if Oshin does sit up, he takes his back off the mat. If he just sets up, I can go to closed body lock passing. Alright, there's different grips, we'll talk about those in a little bit. So again, we bring the heels up towards the butt. We'll just go with open body lock passing for now. So what we want to do is keep our elbows as close as we can to our knees. The more space between my elbows and the knees, the less control I have of Oshin's hips. So if he starts to rock and move, you can see he can kind of take me out of position a little bit. But if I bring my elbows and my knees together, if you try to move Oshin, this should be very hard. Alright, so head position, really important, because when you do body lock passing, people are going to be trying to like frame in your head and make it as nasty as possible. So if I put my head too close to the hip, this suits Oshin for like stuff on my head. So if he starts to frame my head, you can hip escape and move away. What I want to do is I either want to keep the side of my head as close as I can to his armpit. So if you try frame now, Oshin, it's a lot harder as opposed to this. See the way he can move me out of position. So that's a really important detail. I'm just going to bring my ear up towards his armpit here. Alright, if Oshin sits into me, so if he sits up on his right shoulder, I'll use the side of my head to flatten him out, walk my left knee up, right knee up. If Oshin sits up on the opposite shoulder, I switch the head position and I put that shoulder back on the mat. So that's really important for control. So again, shoot my body lock, either slide both knees up first or right knee, left knee. I want to keep my elbows connected to my knees, and ideally what I want to do is if he's staying flat, I want to put my ear kind of as close as I can to his armpit. Not so much that I'm taking weight off my heels where I can be swept. So kind of find that middle ground where you're not overreaching. It's just basically just shifting your head to the outside. If Oshin sits up on his right shoulder and turns into me, I use the right hand side of my head to flatten him out, and then I adjust. If he sits up on the opposite shoulder, change the head position, put that on the floor, and walk back up. Alright, so 3, 2, 1. Talk about the different positions that we can get into when we're using body lock passing, and then like what we do with our legs and our hands to get into those positions. There is different things that come up, like any position you go into. Like if you play closed guard top, there's obviously the triangles, arm bars, omoplatas and that type of stuff. Same in body lock passing. When you're body lock passing, the main kind of threat that people do is like shoulder crunch attacks, so like your kind of like shoulder crunch arm bar sweeps and that type of stuff. There is different ways of using that to your advantage and kind of like pummeling your hands into body lock passing. And obviously the threat of like butterfly guard sweeps and stuff like that, and people framing on your head. So If any of that stuff does come up in live training, I don't cover it, ask a question and hopefully I might be able to help you out. Alright, so
general question.
Yeah.
Alright, so if you're going for the body lock and someone gets a little earlier to the underhook than you anticipated, they're able to jack you a bit higher than you want to be, would your immediate reaction be to bail back into your original position, or is there anything you can do to adjust that?
So you're saying if I'm kind of, you get this?
Yeah. I got a little higher than you thought I was going to be.
Yeah. So, and that's common. If this does happen, one big thing is if you kind of hold on to it fairly tight, a simple answer would be like try to rotate your elbow. So the way my thumb was facing down. So if Oshin holds on to it fairly tight here, it's hard to free it. But if I change the position of my elbow, I can kind of limp arm, and then I can go into body lock stuff and that. If Oshin gets like a really good bite on it and the rotation isn't working, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into like nearly like float style passing. So because I can't go backwards, I'm going to start to come forwards. And then I'll start to free my elbow and we can start to pass from here or retract and go into body lock passing. So that's a really good question because that does come up. So number one, let's say early stage counter, Oshin gets the bite on the arm because this is a legit threat. So whether it's an arm bar or shoulder crunch sweep, first one, early stage is best. You can see my thumb is down. This is a good position for Oshin to set up the arm bar. So if Oshin sets up the arm bar and my elbow doesn't change position, so if he goes for it, he's going to get a nice tap here. Whereas if Oshin gets a bite on it, and I rotate my elbow and my thumb, say the crease of the elbow's up to the ceiling, thumb's up to the ceiling, I can kind of limp arm. The next option is if he gets the bite here and I can't pull out, I get my head as close as I can to Oshin's head, rotate my elbow, I can go back to body lock passing, or I could use this to start doing like flow style passing. Alright? Oshin gets the shoulder crunch and I can't free it, kind of use this a good bit as well. So this is like even later stage. So we said that number one, early stage is for me to rotate my elbow, limp arm and free my elbow. If that's not working, I'm going to go up with my hands, get my head over his head. It's really important that you do that. If my head is too far away from Oshin's head, it means that my arm's extended. If my arm's extended, I'm open to sweeps and arm bars and that type of stuff. Whereas if I can get on my hands and I can go head over head, you can see I can keep my arm bent and then I can start to work from here. So whether that's to go into HQ or go into like body lock passing or float side passing, that's up to you. If I can't free it, so this will be our last one from kind of the shoulder crunch. If I can't free it and he's a good bite, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play between coming forward and going back, and I'm basically going to pull him up and I go flat hand here. Alright, and I'm going to keep weight on my hand. That's my main focus. So ideally I'd want to free my hand, but because I can't, I'm going to use it to my advantage. I'm going to go into the hip switch stuff properly in a few minutes, but just to kind of give you an idea, I'm going to use this to pass and then it turns into crossface underhook. So it was a bad thing and I was able to turn it into a good thing, right? So limp arm number one, float style passing number two, and then if you can't free your arm, your main goal is to put weight in your arm. A similar example to this would be Kimura from half guard. So if Oshin gets a Kimura, there's no weight on it, he'll put behind my back and he'll get the finish or he'll get a sweep. Whereas if I put weight on it here, if Oshin tries to do it, it should be very hard, and then I can start stripping grips and everything else. So if you're in danger, use what you have, and what you have is his body weight on top of your arm to protect it, because it's a nasty submission. So Oshin gets a bite, I can't limp arm, I can't go into float style passing, so I'm just going to get shoulders back off the mat, flat hand, and I drive my shoulder into underneath his neck. From here, we'll cover this properly. I go into like say hip switch, I go thumb down grip on the shoelaces, and it's a very easy pass from here. So keeping his shoulders flat, and I just extend his leg, and I get my hip into that pocket, go with a tight waist or an underhook. Alright, so 3, 2, 1. Early, mid and kind of late stage counters and prevention to the shoulder crunch. So really common submission or sweep attempt from that position. It's also used a lot for like basically submission number one or sweep number one, whichever you prefer. But number two, it's normally used to get separation. So get your opponent to like say pull away so you can go into lower body attacks. So you see that a lot with leg lockers. So they're very good at like say if someone's like countering leg locks with kind of body lock style passing. So I'm saying really tight. Oshin's going to threaten, like say, with an upper body attack, so we just say the shoulder crunch here, and if I start to like pull away or I start to stand, this gives him entries into K guard, single leg X and all that type of stuff, so it's used for that as well. So used as a decoy, right? We'll talk about the kind of different things that we can do with our legs. So this is really important, and this is kind of where the body lock pass falls apart for some people, right? If you're new to it especially. So just give you a couple of options. I won't like run through too much details yet, so we'll talk about grips and everything else. One is the hip switch, so it's basically going into like a 2-on-1 position here. So I'm going 2 knees on 1 shin. So we'll go into details on that in a minute. So I basically just slide the right foot across the centre line. I go 2 knees on 1 shin, and I can either sprawl and start to pass this way, or kind of like one of my kind of favourites is to step over beat the knee and pass from here. Now a really good one against someone that has like kind of long legs or sticky hooks is kind of like this, a sprawl. So I load my weight onto my right leg and I go into a heavy sprawl in this position here, and then we can start to work from that position, right? So that's going around. So with the sprawl or with the hip switch, one of my favorite ones, this one won me £1,000, is Marcelo Pass kind of guard pass, which works really well. Just want to give you ideas about the body lock. Next one is basically just to use it to sit into a half guard, start passing from here, or we can use this to pummel into HQ and start going into knee slice passing. So it's not just about side control. So again, just on the grips actually, you can go with a gable grip, you can go with a flat hand just above each other like this, one on top of the other. I can go with an S grip, we can go with a tight waist and a few different variations, right? Or we can go with open body lock passing. So the details on this is, I stand on my right leg, I slide my left knee towards my right foot, this drags pushing my foot to the centre right. Here, once this happens, I extend my right leg, I go 2 knees on 1 shin, and we're just going to finish off with a little sprawl. Here, tight waist and just in the knee. So I'll do it one last time. So again, body lock, see where I'm standing, kind of like in this position here. Slide the left knee to the right knee, that drags the right leg through the centre line. Bring my right leg back, 2 knees on 1 shin, nice sprawl. We're going with a tight waist, not an underhook. If I go with an underhook, this puts me into that same problem. Alright, so we don't need to control his upper body yet. We haven't passed the lower body, so we're going to stay on the hips and then kind of pin his knee, control his hip. Yeah, so 3, 2, 1. So when I come into this kind of body lock position, if you watch, the first thing I do is I take my knees off the floor just slightly, and my goal is to put like my shoulder into Ushin's sternum to keep him flat. And if you look at my head position, my ear is close to his lap. Remember we were saying if our head drifts away, this allows Ushin to go into frames from the body lock and then start to hip escape and kind of create problems. So if you kind of frame and hip escape Ushin, and then see the way my arms extended, I never want this when I'm body lock passing because it just opens me up to shoulder crunching and that type of stuff. So when we're here, knees are hovering, my upper body is pinning Ushin's upper body and my legs are mobile and nice and light. Alright, so I take this mini step first because I want to have my base in the right position. So I slide, you can see my shoulders now are nice and level. I bring this right leg back, 2 knees on 1 shin, and then all I do is drop down to my right hip here. Alright, when we come into this position, it's really important that we use a tight waist grip, not an underhook. Common mistake, people take an underhook and then this will turn into omoplatas, gogoplatas and everything else. Yeah, so I have no business controlling the upper body until I pass the hips. So I'm going to stay on the hips. The reason why I stay on the hips is if Ushin starts to hip escape and I have no control, you can create space and get hooks in and put me into weird kind of positions here. Whereas if I go with a tight waist and Ushin tries to move, I'll just move with him and then we'll kind of cook him a little bit. Yeah, so tight waist to control the hips. Second thing is you can go with the hand on the knee, it's not wrong. Just the problem with this is it's leaving too much space between my elbow and my hip. So this might invite Ushin into like punching an underhook and, or yeah, even wrist control or any type of attack. Maybe set up a triangle or something like that from this position. So what I like to do is I like to go with like a false grip, so like a gymnast false grip, so wrist, hand detaches and I flare the elbow. So I get control of the hip and the knee here. So if Ushin tries to move his leg or he tries to get an underhook or a grip, everything's packed nice and tight, as opposed to this where you can go wrist control or underhook and so on. So that's a good little detail for you. So tight waist, flare your elbow roughly at 45, false grip, elbow on your training partner's knee. So what we want to do as well is you can see that Ushin's on his side. I want to use the side of my head to keep him flat here. Right, so if Ushin moves around, I move around. So if he tries to hip escape, I just follow him. He creates space, I take the space away. Then my next goal is to make sure my knee beats the line of his knee and his hip. Once this happens, we have a couple of different ways of beating this knee now, or beating the leg. I look to my right side, I use my left hand to straighten his leg, and then what we do is we basically put our right knee underneath his butt. I'm going to go with a tight waist and a near side underhook. Near side underhook is probably one of the biggest changes in my game over the last couple of years. It's an absolute game changer from side control top and half guard top. If Ushin tries to turn into me or tries to bridge or move, even if he tries to open his elbow, he can't. Alright, and then we can start working from this position. So it's good for MMA, good for gi and no gi grappling as well. You can go into traditional side control if you want. So we'll do that one more time. So again, from the start, we win the battle for position. So spines are lined, hips are lined up, head position, so my head's lower than Ushin's. Hand position, close the distance, bring his heels to his butt. Up on her toes, take a step, drag the leg across the center line, keep my hips as level as I can, slide my right knee back, 2 knees on 1 shin, and we sprawl. We're going with tight waist, not an underhook. Retract our elbow, elbow goes to the knee, and I'm using the side of my head to keep Oshin flat. If Oshin moves, he creates space, I take the space away. Once my knee beats the line of his knee, I look to my right side, and I just use my hand to assist his leg, like say over to his opposite leg, here. And then I bring my knee behind his butt, I have a right tight waist, and a left near side underhook. So if Oshin tries to move, this is hard, and now we can go into mount and everything else from here. Alright, 3, 2, 1. On that one, we run through one more time. I managed to get my body lock. I stand on my right leg. Best case scenario, I'm able to drag his right leg across the center line, and then I pass off his right foot to my right knee and my left knee, and then we can go into our sprawl and start passing from here, or we can start stepping over that leg, which we'll cover in a minute. If you find that someone has long legs and they're like being very active with those hooks, like sticky hooks, so he's very active, and I just find that when I stand, I'm not able to drag that leg across the center line. So Oshin's giving me a good bit of resistance. If he's giving me good resistance, as in when I'm pushing him this way, so his leg is coming this way, that's what I'm looking for. Oshin is actually doing this, so he's doing a counter movement. So I'm going to use the push-pull we talk about like in grappling and wrestling. So if you think about it, I want to drag this leg across this side, but Oshin's pulling back that way, so that his energy is going that way. So I'll use this to my advantage. So I'm trying to drag, he's pushing against me, and we just go into a sprawl, because that's where his energy is going. Does that make sense? And it has to be a big sprawl where you're roughly going out at 45 degrees. Common mistake, what people do here is they start the sprawl and they nearly do like a bunny hop. So they go up, their shoulders dip, and then this gets them swept. So if you look at the way I'm doing it, once my hips come up, I'm sloping down. So I don't go up to go up again. Does that make sense? So it's like a slope or like a ramp. So I come up, and then after I come up and I commit to the sprawl, I'm just sloping down. Alright, so a common mistake, people come up and then they come up again and turn their shoulders and then they get swept. So if you kind of look at the way I'm doing it, I try to pass it off. I feel it's going in this direction. So all the weight's in the right foot, so I'm trying to exaggerate the motion a little bit, and then I'm just going to sprawl. Here. 2 options, get to that 2 knees on 1 shin position, and then we can start working from there. Or if he's very sticky with that hook, all I'm going to do is basically send my head over the top shoulder, so my chin over the top shoulder to flatten him out, and I put my right knee kind of in between his butt here. And I sit into half guard. Alright, and then we can start passing from this position. So we go again. So closing the distance. Best case scenario, I was able to drag, pass off, 2 knees on 1 shin, either go into a sprawl or beat the knee. If that's not working, I'm trying to drag Oshin's leg to my right, he's pulling to my left, I push off my right foot and I sprawl. Either I go to 2 knees on 1 shin and start to pass from here, or if he's very active with that hook, I'll just send the head over the top shoulder, bring the right knee towards his butt at the same time, and push his leg down to sit in the half guard. Alright, 3, 2, 1. Detail I want to give you is when we go into our body lock pass, or whichever way I pass off the legs, so I sprawl, you can see that Oshin's shoulder is off the mat, and we're saying that I want to keep my elbows as close as I can to my body here. I have this, let's say, false grip on, like say, the thigh or the quad. If his shoulders are off the mat, and let's say I just stay in this position, and I let his left shoulder pass through my center line, and he goes, like say, for a Kimura or something like this, see this type of stuff. This all started because my weight was in the wrong place and my head was in the wrong position. So if you watch what I do, it's a subtle movement. So I'm keeping this tight waist around his hips. I take my knees off the floor, and when I go into my pass, so Oshin, if you try to sit up, watch where my weight and head goes. Here, over that shoulder, and then I get my near side underhook. So that's a small movement, and it stops the shoulder passing through the center line for sweeps, frames, kimuras, whatever comes up in that position, right? So we just do that one more time. So it's a subtle movement. So we're here. See, I'm using the side of my head like we did in the beginning of our session. So I'm using the side of my head here. Retract my elbow. If I feel that Oshin's starting to come up, my knees are hovering, and watch where I send my weight. Over that top shoulder, and then we can start to work from there. Yeah. So, any questions about what we've done, or are we good? Any questions outside of this kind of related to body lock passing, or we're all good? Yeah.
It's just that hip switch, and then whatever you call it, the slide.
The sprawl, yeah.
They're quite athletic movements. Like, is there a slow version of this basically? Where you don't, like, how do you get rid of that hook?
Yeah, I'll give you another option. So you can have like a reactive or a proactive approach to body lock passing. So proactive is obviously me initiating it like the way I was, with my hips and sprawling. Reactive, and it works really well, is when I keep pushing against Ushin, and we're talking about that isometric like tension and that through his legs and tiring them out. A lot of time when you push someone, you kind of bend their legs, they're going to try kick you off. All right. So I'd use this to pass. So I'm here. I'm trying to, maybe he's very sticky or active. I'm trying to leg press. So if he keeps trying to leg press, maybe I'll jump in actually for a head, show you something. So one way of kind of like countering the body lock pass is to try like flare the elbows, take the shoulder off the floor, and start to rock. It involves me straightening my legs. So if we go one more time. So this is hard for me to sit up against someone that's good at body lock passing. So we try to open up the elbows, bring our knees to our chest, and then we start to rock from this position. And I extend, all right? It's a good way of coming up, but the problem is, if Ushin does it to me, when he starts to come up and he straightens his legs, this allows me to pass. Does that make sense? So I pressure him a little bit to try to get that, you push and then you get that pull, the extension, and then you can start to pass from there. So we go one more time. So I'm here, I'm trying to go forward, I trying to keep him in this position, he kicks, and then I sprawl and then start to pass from this position. What you also have as well is, it's not a body lock pass, but it ties in really well with body lock passing, is when I come into this position and he's very active, so very active with his hooks, I can go into fall-in style passing from there. Another option that we have is, maybe we're not able to go 2 knees on 1 shin, is to split the leg, pummel in, and then start to go into HQ and so on. And if that doesn't work, I have no more answers. We just stand up. Does that answer it a little bit?
It's just that sticky hook that I try to clear.
Some people with long hands kind of like to do this one. I used to do, I don't use it anymore, is if you can only get this foot across, just grab the shoelaces, bring that across. Here, so that's another little option as well. But the movement that you want is try to keep the steps as small as possible. So it shouldn't be at leg. This looks at leg, but I'm loading my weight on my right side so I can sprawl. The movement that we want on the hip switch is this. Little walk, step, here, here. So it's not too at leg, I suppose, it's just knowing where your hips and your legs are. So, yeah. That is one of the most annoying things in that position, is that hook, If that fails, the Marcelo Garcia one, I use this like 3 times in one night. But I can't go around, all I do is just go over to pass. So about 10 options there. All right.
Is there a hierarchy of grips? Like, if you get it, what's your favorite grip for the body lock?
So I do like, depending on who it is, right? So I do like this open style body lock passing if you're good at, say, sweeping or off balancing, because sometimes, like, where when my hands are out, if Ushin tries to move me a little bit, he tries sweeping, so you know, I can use my hands. Where sometimes I find that my hands are here and maybe he gets me out of position, my hand is kind of caught a little bit. Now, not that's wrong, I suppose, just being aware of your body position and that. But that being said, if Ushin sits up, so we have the open body lock pass, I have the tight waist and kind of like this secondary hand. If Ushin sits up again and he tries to come up on his hand to try counter the body lock and raise his hips, I like an S grip to bring his hips in, tight waist, and then grab this elbow here. Here we go one more time. One that I've been playing around with, I suppose, over maybe the last year, is just this one here. See the way I'm going, like long hook or long grip, short grip, down here. So Ushin tries to move around. Here, so I think it's preference. I used to lock my hands a good bit, but now I kind of lock the hands to pull the hips in. Now I just kind of like to put weight on the hands or go with open style body lock passing or tight waist or something. So does that help a little bit? Yeah. And there's loads of, you can go S grip, gable grip, and all that as well. So I don't really think there's a wrong way, just kind of whatever suits your body type. So it happened to me a couple times in competition. If you go with someone that has like long legs, but you can use this to counter it. It can be frustrating, but you can use it to your advantage. This will be the last thing we'll just kind of talk about unless you have questions, right? So I pass, I come into this position, and let's say Ushin is able to get like he's trying to hook in to take my back, so he's putting his heel into this left hip here. A lot of people get caught with this and they're not able to move. So you can see that I'm making myself as small as possible by, like, say, keeping my chest down towards the floor. So if you keep that really active, I'm going to put a bit more pressure on his hook. So it's kind of like I'm spring loading it. I start to go over onto his knee, and then watch the way I take my chest and shoulders from facing down towards the floor to up towards the wall. And then this kind of spring loads it, we back elbow. then we can pass. Alright, so what you don't want is when someone's doing that is to stay in this position because they just have a good attachment. So watch the way I kind of make myself big. So we're here, my shoulders a lot higher. So you can see how low it is here. I bring it higher, I walk, and then I kind of like spring load there or hook, and then we just back elbow to pass. So we got one last time. So we're somewhere here. He gets a good bite. The taller your opponent, the more frustrating it can be. I try to walk, right? It's not really working. So what I do is I go to use the grip, so our false grip, keep our tight waist, and then I'm going to try to get as much weight as I can on the knee. I make myself as big as possible, and out the back elbow. Alright, so if you go into that position, you can use that to your advantage. So that's all I have. Alright, so any questions? Or? Yeah.
If you're finding yourself in close guard, what mistake are you making? Like, where's the...
Would you believe it or not, I made that mistake Saturday night in the match.
No?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't competing in oils, and like body lock pass is one of my favourite ways to go, and kind of I suppose the most important, my mindset was like win the match. I didn't tell anyone, I went into the match with a bit of an injury and a few other things, and I was like, right, the most important thing to win, and the opponent was a very good opponent. He's like a European champion and bronze Nogi world medalist, so it was important for me to get the win. So what I did wrong is I stepped too loose. So I come into a position like this. We ended up here, and it might be just from maybe not a little bit of ring rust or mat rust, whatever you want to look at. And basically what I did is I left too much separation between his right heel and kind of like his butt. So basically you can see Ushin's on his right hip. If he just kind of goes over to his left hip, he can kind of put me into close guard. And then my opponent started to do like Ezekiel's from the bottom to try score and that. And yeah, so that was that. But basically the problem was I left too much space between the heel and the hip. So what I should have done is bring that heel as close as I can up towards his butt. So if we do that one more time, so say if we're here and we're here, so if Ushin tries to hip escape, see the way I'm tighter, and then now I can start to go into my he just disappeared over there.
Yeah, sorry.
Bang. That's how you end the seminar. Does that answer it a little bit? Yeah. So it basically means that you don't have a good grip on the tight waist. When he moves, you're not taking the space away, and you're not bringing his heel up to his butt.
Do you mean as you approach or as you're in it?
No, as I'm in it, then I'm just about to
just like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the mistake I did. It was kind of obviously sometimes it can be different under lights compared to the gym and that, but that's something I took away from my match. And normally that would be a position for me where I would I would get a lot of passes going, or that'd be like one of my main kind of positions. But that's where I messed up. So we still got the win. So that's all. Any other questions, or are we all good?
I'll ask one if that's okay. So if you were approaching someone who wasn't playing butterfly guard and you wanted to kind of force this position, so let's say they were looking at posting hips, they were looking to play upper guard, what would your approach be if you were trying to force it?
Like kind of like a simple answer would be like to get into that would be come down nice and low. I grab the feet and then I just stop here, which works really well. And I use this a lot of the time if you have some like say young someone that's like really young and athletic and fucking like flexible and that, and just have a really good guard retention in that, and like say outside passing isn't working, I'll just basically just put them back, lead with my hips, kind of like you're doing like pushing the guard in MMA. I bring kind of the heels between my butt, and then I either get the hands inside for body lock pass, and if you're kind of very strong, I just go into fold and pass kind of from there. Does that answer it? Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%.
Hopefully you got something good from that, so thanks for coming. So.